What's going on, YouTubers, gamers and hobbyists? Welcome to part 2 of getting started with Warhammer 40,000, this magazine thing I came across the other day, yesterday in fact, at the time of recording, whilst I was unpacking some Necrons. Okay, so this magazine is for the beginner, showing you how to get into the game. It's designed to get you into the hobby basically, and shows you all the different aspects of the hobby. But what we're going to concentrate on today is building the two miniatures that you got with it, or that you get with it. These two here, and it doesn't matter if the magazine you've got has different miniatures on it. It's slightly different. I'm sure that Games Workshop have a similar type of magazine out now, if not that one. So let's get to the bench, and we'll talk about what we can do to get our miniatures built. Right, so here we are. I'm going to pop my glasses on because I'm an old git. Grab a bit of coffee here. Now, sprues. These are sprues. So you've got two miniatures on here, a Necron and a Space Marine. So, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I kind of like how they've kind of got different bits on different sides. It's not like you can just cut it down in two and say Space Marine Necron. Don't know why they do that. Now, when I first started the hobby, well, not when I first started the hobby properly, but I can remember a time when I would just twist these off. Don't ever do that because it leaves nasty, ugly marks behind. On a sprue, typically when you buy a model, they have numbers or sections, and it's all labelled. And then in the instructions, these are snap fit, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But in the instructions, it will tell you like you need parts 13 and 12, and they go connect to part 10 and whatever. And I like to take them off a little bit at a time. Some people like to take them all off. I'm going to take them all off in this instance because it's a snap fit model. I'm going to be using, well, I'm going to try and use these cheap cutters. Get these for a couple of quid off eBay. You don't need any fancy stuff. So remember, at this point in time, you are just dipping your toes into the hobby. You're not unless you're like me. I'm the sort of person that goes out and buys everything all at once and dives right in head first. But you don't need to. And even the bases here, you've got part of the foot of a Necron on there, so you know that's the Necron base, and you've got part of a foot of a Space Marine on this one, so you know that's the Space Marine base. Yeah. So I'm going to cut all these off. So I paid a couple of quid for these. So you first thing to do is cut your bits off of the sprue, and they'll still leave behind little marks, like here. So, and if you paint straight over that will show up like a sore thumb. So I'll show you how to deal with that in a moment. So that's the Necron one, so I'm just going to cut all the Necron bits off here. Just try and be as careful as you can. If you're not sure what part is the model and what part is the sprue, then try and cut as far away from what you think might be the model as you can. You can always tidy the rest up later. Okay, so I'm just cutting out the snap fit models. Are usually obvious how they go together, yeah, so I'm going to do that. Now, with snap fit models, you don't need glue, but I'm going to be gluing mine, but I will talk about glue in a moment. If you decide to get into this hobby, and you're going to be wanting to glue most models, glue together. This is actually part of the fun. Believe it or not, I like the building of a model. Depending on how far along your journey you are, you may not like that. Some people I know don't even like painting their model. They just like to buy them, send them off to someone to get them built and painted for them. That's okay. Yeah, depends what you like. Right, so we just have one more piece, and it's this other arm. You know, so be very careful. Oh no, it's his leg, sorry. Be very careful how... No, it is, it's an arm. Take it back. Right, so be very careful how you remove the parts. Okay. So that's the Necron there. I'm going to do the same for my Space Marine. And I'll just put that to a different... Put it to one side. Put that over there. So we've got our base. And you will want some tools. Some you might be able to get or cobble together now without buying a thing. You might be able to. I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying you might be able to. The basics you need when you get into it are some cutters, whether it's, you know, cheapy ones like this or some more expensive ones like this. That's fine. So you're going to want some cutters. You're going to want also a hobby knife. I'll talk about that in a moment. Like you will hear it referred to in some quarters as an X-Acto blade. I'm guessing that's because they use it to cut exact segments or measurements. I don't know. It's got a bit of an accessory here, like a holster with some grenade holders as well. So I'm just cutting off all the parts that I know I'm going to need. Like his head. What have we got left? Oh, his backpack. Very iconic for the Space Marines. Sometimes the bits just fall apart as you're cutting, so don't worry about that. But they will always leave behind a bit of a mark. But before you paint, you do need to sort that out. Right, so I've cut off everything from my sprue. That sprue is now dead to me. I've got no use for it. Some people use sprues to build other models. I've done that myself before, but not in this instance. So there's my cutters. So an X-Acto blade or a hobby blade or something of this nature, with a blade that looks like that. Sometimes you use that to cut away from the sprue. Sometimes you use it to clear mold lines and things like that. Another thing you may need is a file of some description. Now I've got myself some like jeweler's files here. You may find a couple of nail files in your wife's nail box or something. If you've got something like that lying around, or just ask her and I'm sure she'll be able to help you with that. Okay, so the next thing I would do is I would look at all my parts. The base, now there were 4 contact points on this base, so I'm just going to, where I cut away, just gently rub either with your like nail file, as I say, or as I'm using here, like a jeweler's file or hobby file. You can get them. They're not very expensive. So this is just for the base to tidy it up. Now, if you're buying models in a box, like a box of Space Marines or whatever, you're going to need glue. And there's different types. Some people like to use super glue. I personally don't like super glue. I find the fumes, for one, very overpowering for myself. And for another, I don't like it. You get your fingers, I got big fingers and hands, stick together too easily. But what you can use for plastic, if it's a plastic model, get some plastic cement. And lots of hobby places do this. But plastic glue is what you will need. That's what you will need in order to Yeah, I might use the other one actually. It's a bit more precise. It's got a brush too. This is good because it comes with a little applicator brush thing, very small, and yeah, it's really cool, and it's extra thin as well. As I say, you don't actually need it for these guys here, but right, mold lines. Now there's mold lines, there's little lines that come to it out of the mold, and there's also the bits that you would see. If we can focus here, do you see on his leg just there? That's where we cut with our clippers away, and you can either use the knife, the sharp edge of the knife, or the blunt edge of the knife. And sometimes you'll see lines along the model somewhere. There's one here running up his leg. I don't know if you can see that. Get the right light, you can see it running up there. Not overly apparent now, but when you put paint on, they stick out a mile. So you just run the flat of the blade over it, or there is actually a tool you can get called a mold line remover. But these are things that you get, you know, as you get further into the hobby. So you just go around the model, clean up all the areas that you see that need cleaning. I'm just going to try and do this relatively quickly, but you take your time. You can even get a brush as well to brush away all the excess plastic. Now, the other thing to be wary of when you're buying and gluing models together is not to get confused with resin and plastic. The reason you need to know what model you've got is plastic glue will not work on resin. Even though it feels like plastic, it will not stick it. You might as well use water for all the good it will do. You have to use super glue on that. And obviously, like metal models, older models are often in metal. A lot of historical models are in metal, but you know, for Warhammer, if you're using older models, then they will be in metal too. You still get them, and you can still buy some in metal because they're old, like molds of, you know, old sculpts of models that just haven't been updated for a long time. So again, you'll need super glue for those. When you're happy, you know, you just move on. So I like to just go around each piece individually, looking for where I've cut it away from the sprue, any mold lines that are associated with it, or with my cutting it away. And don't beat yourself up if you miss them. You can always go back and do it, you know, before you start painting. You know, you can put your model together and then see, but you can still usually get to most areas, even though it's been glued together or put together or what have you. It's not really a big deal. It's nothing that can't be fixed, you know. And I'm quite finicky when it comes to mold lines. I really don't like them. If you don't have a brush, keep blowing it. I mean, I say a brush, I mean something like this. They might recommend, you know, just to brush it off. But we're beginners. We don't have that, so we're just using what we can find here. And honestly, you're going to need, like I say, you're going to need a knife and a pair of snips, really, as a minimum. But they're not expensive, and they don't need to be. Most art craft places will provide you, will supply that kind of thing, you know. They'll just have it. I believe this X-Acto blade came from like a place called The Works, which is just a stationery art shop, which is like a franchise. Alright, just coming on to his torso. And I will repeat this for the Space Marine as well. It's exactly the same, just going around each bit before we put them together. Hardest thing in most cases is usually the head. I can see where I took it off the sprue. Now, if you're not sure how to put your model together, your model box of models, whatever it is, and even in here, will have a guide. You know, but as I say, for most push fit models, it's really straightforward. But just follow your guide. So, for instance, this is how you follow building instructions. Yeah. So the first part's about the Space Marines. So we're looking at the Necrons. So it's telling you numbers 3 and 4, which are numbered on the sprue, but you can see what they are here anyway. Go together like that. Okay. Numbers 1 and 2 go together. Number 2 is the base. So maybe we'll glue that first. Perhaps that might be a thing, you know. Let's glue our Necron to our base. So that would... Now at the feet he's got a little peg, and on the base there is a hole. The peg goes in the hole, and it's usually pretty straightforward as to how that transpires. So let's zoom in a bit more here. Right, so make sure we get some of the glue. I'm putting it on here and here. The plastic glue, it's got acetone in it, which melts plastic together. It gives you a very strong bond. Right, so I prefer plastic glue to super glue. You get a lot of with things like arms and that, you get a lot of wiggle time, they call it. Now I'm going to put the numbers 3 and 4 together, these 2 bits there. So I've put those together, I've put that together. Yeah, and again, okay, what's the shape on there? Okay. It looks like on these instructions you put his torso on after you put the arms on, which is quite odd, but we can do that. So I'm gonna put some glue in here. Right, so he's got a hole there, and on one of the arms you've glued or snapped in, he's got a peg, and that will go in the hole, and the other's got a recess for the bit that sticks out. So I'm going to glue those. Bit of glue in the hole, bit of glue in the recess. Like that. So he's looking like that at the minute. Okay. Next is the torso. The torso goes on. There's a bit that sticks out in the chest, in between the arms. It looks like it goes in a hole here. I'm carefully going to try and maneuver that around there. Right, so his torso is on. All that remains is for the head to go on. Again, I'm going to glue it. I'm not going to just snap fit it, because it's not like it dries in seconds or anything. It takes a while. It takes a couple of minutes to take hold. But there you are. There is your Necrom warrior. He's all built. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, same steps for the Space Marine. And then I will see you on the next episode, folks, with our ready-built Space Marines. But that is how you put your models together to start with. Okay, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on another video. Bye for now.